Welcome to Tell the Damn Story, the show that explores the many ways to navigate the successes and failures that aspiring and struggling writers face to make your journey that much easier.
Hey, ladies and gentlemen, how are you? Welcome to a very special episode of Tell the Damn Story, where we are going to, on today's episode, we are going to discuss a Thanksgiving tradition, at least in the New York tri-state area. In preparation for this episode, we asked friends of ours from way up in Buffalo and way down in Georgia and discovered that they didn't share the same experience that we have enjoyed for decades, which is watching the Laurel and Hardy film, The March of the Wooden Soldiers, every Thanksgiving morning. For decades for our guest part, for multiple decades for my part, and for centuries for Alex Simmons. So it has been left to us, because we're not sure who else in the country gets this, and hopefully they do, but it's been left to us to look at this almost cult classic and ask ourselves, why did this film, out of all the movies over the past 90 years, that's right, this film is celebrating its 90th anniversary this year. Why did this film, The March of the Wooden Soldiers, become part of our Thanksgiving experience?
And for you folks who are new to the show, and bad on you, that's Chris Ryan, who is a wonderful author and has for the past 30 years written sci-fi, horror, detective thrillers, action adventure stories, and was a teacher of literature and fine films and so forth for 30 some odd years. And I'm
I was even a journalist before. That's how you first met me.
He was a journalist, right? And he was also
an
journalist. Son of a gun. And I'm Alex Simmons, and I, for the past 35 years, have also written comics and plays and novels and children's books. And I've also been an international speaker across the world. And our guest today, returning in that far left corner there, or the far right corner, or the middle, whatever, is Mr. Caseen Gaines, who is also a, Chris,
he's a nonfiction pop culture expert and author of several really well-written and enjoyable tomes on pop culture. I'm sure he's got 7 of them in the cooker for the upcoming future here. But today he has agreed to share his love and to apply his pop culture skills to this film, The March of the Wooden Soldiers. Now, if you hang around throughout this, you'll be able to see how you can apply the same kind of things we're discussing to your favorite film. Why does this attract you? And what writing elements, what story elements, what character elements can you pull out and say, okay, I recognize that in my writing, I've been influenced by that, or I want to try that, right? So that's part of what today is all about. But if you hang around through all those lessons, what you're going to get at the end is our favorite lines, our favorite gags, our favorite.
Caseen, say hello.
Well, now that we've set the table, remember, before Thanksgiving, you have to set the table.
Yes. Well,
now the table is set, and you get your guests around the table, and you say, "Welcome, Caseen Gaines. Thanks for joining us this Thanksgiving. How are you, sir?"
I am good. I am ready to eat, but the dinner always tastes better after March of the Wooden Soldiers.
I agree. Yes.
Yep.
A little tiny glass of eggnog to go along with while you watch.
Yeah, you're an eggnog guy.
Oh, it's got to be Turkey Hill eggnog. I know they're not a sponsor, but
not yet. But hey, Turkey Hill, if you'd like to sponsor, it'll cost you $3.85.
Yeah, we take the big numbers here.
All right, Caseen, how long, in your memory, how long have you been partaking in this tradition of watching the March of the Wooden Soldiers on Thanksgiving morning?
Oh boy, since I have to probably put it at 5 or 6, maybe really young. I have an aunt, she since passed away, but she got me into all sorts of cool things. I have lots of family members that got me into cool things.
Yeah.
And this is the same aunt who got me into the Back to the Future films, and she's
responsible for most of your nonfiction writing career here.
Yeah. And for some reason, I don't know why, as I'm thinking about it, it was like all the aunts. They were just, here's something that I really liked. you might like this and you might like this. And I just was like, okay. I was just very open in that way. Yeah. So she just had a ton, like people, well, she was a pretty vociferous reader actually, but she had tons of bookshelves and she had tons of VHS shelves.
Sure.
Like it was just like like an amazing collection, equal parts books and movies. And she would read aggressively, and the movies were like for the guests. I don't think she watched movies as much. And she got this, and I didn't realize, I don't even think I would have cared if it was, you're saying 90 years ago now, but I don't think I realized it was quite that old. But I just loved it. And I think The Cell, she would always give less than an elevator pitch. It was like a one-floor elevator pitch. She would just go, here's a movie it's about a bunch of fairy tales, but there are these two guys in it that like get into trouble. And it's like, that's the whole pitch. And I'm like, all right, I'll watch that.
It's a tribute to how open you were that would hook you.
Yeah, that was it. And it was, I loved it. I just thought it was so funny from just the opening title. I won't go into too far into it, but even just the opening title sequence with Laurel and Hardy and the feather, as simple, they're both sleeping in bed and this feather they pass between the two of them. As simple as that was, I was like, oh, how do you do that? This is so funny. I loved it.
So fun fact for you, Caseen. Alex Simmons actually was a hired hand on the filming of March of the Wooden Soldiers. He was 22, and he was the guy holding the fish, the fishing pole with the little wire on that feather. Alex, can you tell us about that seminal experience?
Yeah, I wasn't the only 22-year-old on the set. The guy who played Barnabas also was 22 years old. Yeah,
Barnaby, Silas Barnaby. Yeah, doesn't look. He's over my shoulder, and at that time, he looked. The makeup made him look 40 years, 50 years.
Well, he's supposed to be 60 in the film.
So 40 years older than he actually was. Yeah,
but he was 22. And there's a story supposedly, and folks, we're not getting sidetracked here. We're just giving you background. There's a story that goes that when he was hired to do that, some of the old timers were perturbed because they felt like, I should get that part. Why should this 22-year-old get it? You know, what's he got that we don't? We're already looking this old. And he said they had no idea how they dodged a bullet, because on shooting that film, and if you see the film, he's jumping all over the place. He's being thrown all over the place. He's being whacked with wooden clubs and things like that. He says they wouldn't have survived it.
Oh, yeah. So, and of course, we'll get into that later on. But do you want to start with part one?
I was not on the set. Thank you very much. Okay.
So I was going to ask if you then also played the feather in Forrest Gump, if this was just like a recurring like feather motif.
Yeah, it's true. You got to specialize.
In Hollywood, they do call him Alex Feathers Simmons, but it's a whole different.
That's a feather in my cap.
All right, let's talk about part one, which we're going to talk about the longevity. Look into the longevity. Why has this so grabbed a couple of generations now of people who get up early on Thanksgiving morning and watch it? Now, I was saying before that people are cooking and that kind of stuff, so you do that type of stuff. But the March of the Wooden Soldiers fans, like three of us, we're not cooperative for that hour and a half. We're not really helping that much because we're zoned in. And every writer, every creator, fiction, nonfiction, any kind of genre, there is underneath all of the efforts that little dream of being able to contribute something of lasting quality, of that hits longevity and that people love for years and years. So here's what I want to ask as a writing exercise, and we're using this, but you can apply these questions to your favorite film as well. So why do you, both of you gentlemen, why do you think, in Alex's case, using that word gentleman loosely, why do you think a movie that was out of character for the two comedy icons, Laurel and Hardy, and featured often horrible costumes, terrible special effects, overly romantic music, but still had pretty good performances all around? It was an interesting cast. How did that mix together to become a movie that is still being shown 90 years later? What are your thoughts on that?
First, go ahead, Caseen.
Oh boy,
yeah, let's put him on the spot.
You gave me the easy one first. I think so. There's a couple straight things as you were talking. A couple things. First of all, when you talk about he isn't a writer on this, but you have to give a lot of credit to Hal Roach,
Yes.
Who was a film producer. I think he might have also been a writer. Producers and writers, that can be a little bit of an amorphous relationship. And Hal Roach is, of course, the person who gave the world Laurel and Hardy and also the Our Gang Little Rascals films.
Right.
And he had such a great sense of assembling a team of people that could structure stories that felt very intimate and small, or vignettes that felt very small, but also told this larger story. I mean, if you look at any of the Our Gang or Laurel and Hardy, they're all just vignettes or bits in a sense. But if you look at the amount of output over the 20, 30 years, probably longer than that Hal Roach was really a force in the entertainment industry, they were churning out these stories like every 2 weeks, these episodes that we can still quote and remember bits from and all these things. It would have been easy for that stuff to be very disposable, but it was so well written in its simplicity that it became universal. I hope that this is making sense. What I'm saying.
No, it makes a lot of sense.
Not at all. Can't understand what you're saying.
And so I think
Preach, brother.
one of the things that helps with this film is it's a holiday movie. It's framed around Christmas, or the build-up narratively is to Christmas, but you don't have to watch it around the holidays. It's better. It feels good. It's a good kickoff to the holiday season, but I think just the comedy bits stand up on their own.
Yeah.
And I also think there's something to the over-the-topness of the performances, particularly the Barnaby, of course, but also I think there's just always a place for that type of humor and that type of performance. And that's why things like The Wizard of Oz, there's something about these pop culture moments or stories from the 20s and 30s and maybe even a little bit of the 40s that really stick around, because I think, I don't know, I feel like I'm not really being very articulate, but there's a sort of universality. Yeah, go ahead, Alex. Say me.
Okay, so one, let's help set the bed here, tighten the sheets and everything. This was made in 1934. All right, so we're looking at a completely different era in society at that time, different mindset. We also were coming out of the Depression. There's a bunch of other things that were going on at that time. World War I had only been over for just like, 15 years at that point. So people are still recovering. And cinema was definitely, other than radio, cinema was the major arena for entertainment and distraction and satisfaction and storytelling. You had books, you had radio, you had cinema. And when we look at this film now, in terms of the story, one, it's a fun story. It's a gentle story. It's good versus evil. It's love conquers all. It's silly, goofy people have a place in this world. There's all of these good little messages in there at a time when people needed good, fun, uplifting, distracting messages. So that's one. Two, you have you mentioned costumes, terrible costumes. Okay, yeah, the bogeymen, and folks, if it's 90 years old, if you haven't seen the movie, I'm sorry, they're going to be spoilers, all right? The bogeymen.
I was just about to sit down and watch this. Now you've ruined it.
That's okay. In 5 minutes, you'll forget. Anyway, right? The bogeymen were probably the most, what do we got we can throw together to make these guys look like monsters? Okay, I got an old broom. I got a blanket. So those costumes were definitely schlock. But once again, 1930s, you had this sort of giant screen boogeymen of creatures coming at you on this giant screen. You had the hapless heroes, and then you have our goofy characters. So I don't know that people were looking at the costumes and going, oh, that's so phony. I don't think so. I think they were like totally caught up in the story, totally caught up in, are they going to make it? How are they going to do it? And I think that once we remember that, plus the special effects with the marching soldiers at that when they line up, when they set up. Again, now with CGI, please. But then that was magnificent. And that was in the same era as King Kong. Well, Mighty Joe Young came later, but King Kong, so you had limited stop motion animation, but when it was done smoothly enough, yes, we were totally fascinated
It
by
was
it.
groundbreaking for its day.
Yes, absolutely. So you had this magical moment happening on screen, big screens for family and kids. And I think that really what it did was it left people feeling good.
Yeah.
I think that's what it did then. And I think what's happened phenomenally is that somehow people didn't forget about it. It went dark for a period of time, but once television found it, once WPIX here in New York, I don't know about the rest of the country, but once WPIX found it here in New York, you had your grandparents showing it to you, or your older aunts and uncles showing it to you,
Right.
and so they could relive their childhood a bit. And then the parents, your parents in the middle, oh yeah, I heard about this, or maybe I such and such. So they're going to watch it. They're discovering it with you. You're discovering it. So then it becomes almost a legacy experience.
Yeah.
And I think we still, in this time period, in 2024, we still need simple joy. We still need a story that says good does conquer evil. We still need stories that say love will out in some way, shape, or form. And I think that's a tiny piece of why this story still, 90 years later, in black and white, although it's been colorized in some performances, still amuses, still has a place because there's still children to watch it, and there's still old fogies like me and Chris who remember it and are going to keep talking about it. And then there's someone like Caseen who's that middle range who's going, yeah, I like this too, and I'm gonna pass this on to some people as
Yeah.
well. So it may have another 50, 40, 90 years. I don't know.
Can
Well,
I? Oh,
all
sorry.
right, go ahead. Then I'm gonna.
I just want to add one more thing. I think the writing, the comedy writing, is really smart, and I think it's easy to dismiss that sort of humor where you see the joke coming, where it's set up, punch. But I think they get such mileage out of you see the setup, it's coming, but maybe Oliver Hardy doesn't realize it's going to come. We see it coming, but one of the characters doesn't see it coming. So there's a little bit of dramatic irony there.
Right.
And then the real punch isn't in what happens, it's in the reaction. It's in the reaction shot. It's in the expression. It's in the blow up after what happened. And you get that again, it's a Hal Roach sort of staple style, but if you go back and look at those Our Gang films, there's such great wordplay, visual jokes,
And naturalness too. There's a certain
yes,
naturalness to it.
yeah, and
The
it's
language.
very adult. It's adult as in you have to have a certain knowledge to get the wordplay. You have to really be paying attention to see it coming, but it's also a little bit slapsticky, so it works for kids. And I think that's a real gift that is dismissed sometimes as being corny or cheesy or a little bit too on the nose kind of comedy. But I actually really, anyone who knows my comedy sensibility will not be surprised by this, but I always like that kind of comedy. I think that it's timeless type of comedy.
And Chris,
I agree with you, and I'm going to tie in the reason why Tell the Damn Story exists is so that we're going through our writing journey so that yours is smoother. And the same applies here. The comedy you're talking about is different than a lot of today's comedy, which is usually written and packaged with a much shorter shelf life. This is character comedy, where the strength of Stan Laurel and the strength of Oliver Hardy and the chemistry they have together is the core of the comedy. It's them having those intimate moments right behind you. They're eating, I think it looks like English muffins or something, right? And having a conversation. And it's such a regular, everyday thing, but it's allows them to bounce the humor and the joke off their types, off their character types. So writers, when you're writing, you're looking to have fully formed characters that can carry that. And then as people get used to your characters, they can expect things that will happen and enjoy seeing them happen. The conversation you see there behind Caseen and the smiling behind Alex, those are moments that build up and pay off in making sometimes pedestrian jokes work funnier because you know the characters so well. By the time they get in trouble with the law, everything that happens during that scene, spoilers, Ollie wanting to protect his watch or Stan's watch. No, Ollie's watch, right?
Yeah.
And then in a moment of pique and wanting some revenge, he actually winds up turning the tables on Stan, but at the same time turning the tables on himself. Those little things. The evidence conversation where they're looking at the sausage links and all the jokes. I think Silas has a hand in this. And of course, Stan is going to look at the link looking for the hand. All those little moments, it's because you know who these characters are that they work so well. The other thing you spoke about Hal Roach and it was a stable of characters, and this was very much a company system and that kind of stuff. So actors were just used to working and working every day. And that makes it easier for the creatives to buy in, right? And that's one of the values that I don't think is talked about enough about creating a writing habit where you write at least a little bit every day. It eases the buy-in. It's not such a mountain to climb. How am I going to approach this character? How am I going to write this scene? If you're writing a scene every day, you know that you can come back to it. It's part of the flow, right? These gentlemen were doing the kind of comedy they do every day. The cast were working every day. Old Woman in the Shoe is also in Little Rascals episodes, right? This was her, she was a character actress. This is who she did. Some of the soldiers, who making these faces and stuff, that's what their shtick was.
And Barnaby is a repeat from Little Rascals too.
I'm sorry?
Barnaby he was at least in one of the Little Rascals with the Barber of Seville. Yeah, so it's
and that big,
I don't know if it's the exact same character, but it's a similar,
almost silent film kind of bigness, right?
Mm-hmm.
And even that, think of the universality, the eternalness of Silas Barnaby. Okay, let me describe him to you. He is an older man who presents himself oddly, is one of the richer people in town, and he's a real estate mogul and universally hated, or pretty universally hated, except by the bogeymen who have blind faith in him.
Wow.
How universal is that? So there's a popular thing is, oh, you got to write against the tropes and this kind of stuff. I think combining tropes with very specific, very fully developed characters freshens those tropes.
Let's talk about that for a moment, because the tropes, i.e. going back to Laurel and Hardy, someone was telling me a few days ago how they loved Laurel and Hardy, but really couldn't stand Abbott and Costello, or they couldn't stand watching Abbott and Costello. And I think part of that was, in Laurel and Hardy, the bigger gentleman, for those of you who don't know the team, Hardy did feel full of himself a lot of times. He did seem to feel like, I know everything. I'm the one who should be in charge. I'm this, I'm that. And Stanley is the idiot partner or sidekick or the child, right? But I am all this. But there was always, it never worked for him. He always wound up sabotaging himself. He would always wind up somehow being caught in his own, or hoisted in his own petard. And so bottom line is, no matter how pompous, he got deflated quickly. And sometimes Stanley would deflate him with a certain sort of innocence about it.
Sure.
Whereas with Abbott and Costello, Abbott was always hardcore, was always smacking Costello. There was more of an aggressive relationship between them, where Abbott's constantly the aggressor and Costello's constantly receiving that, on the receiving, except for one film. And so I think that what we had with Laurel and Hardy is we had these two buddies, these two friends, these two childlike adults who were trying to figure out stuff, trying to make it. They were never really super successful. I think there's maybe one film where they were where one of them was well off, but the bottom line is it was usually working class or lower, and they were just trying to make it day to day. And
Yeah.
sometimes they'd have these ideas that they'd want to do things. So here in this film, they worked for, and again, this is not a spoiler, folks. Just again, 90 years. Okay, come on, catch up. They worked for Santa Claus. They worked for a toy
Toy
maker,
maker,
and Santa
whose
Claus
main
put in.
contractor was
Yeah. So they work in the toy shop. They make
yeah.
toys, and Santa Claus had put in an order. I'm not going to say what, but he put in an order which Stanley, the thin one, gets wrong, horribly wrong.
Yeah.
And this is like the beginning. This is like the inciting incident, or this is more of a breadcrumb setting you up for something that's coming later. But
Right.
when he finds out how big a mistake that he made, they get fired.
Right.
So they're not on top of the world. They're not moguls. They're not moving and shaking. They got, what do we do now? What do we do now?
Right.
And we could feel for them. We could always feel for them. We could always root for them. And I think that when you take that kind of one character is a little bit stronger than the other, or one character is a little bit smarter than the other, but they stick together no matter what, that is a trope that you can utilize if you develop your characters well. And as you were saying, Chris, it's really developing the characters to a point where your audience can somehow identify with them or empathize with them, so
And
that we'll go on the journey with them, hopefully to see them win or lose depending on what kind of a journey they're on.
and look on, if people say those are too old characters, let's go with some lesser old characters that are still the legacy of Laurel and Hardy, right? There's Ralph Cramden and Norton, right? There's Barney Rubble, there's Fred Flintstone and Barney Rubble, there's the Odd Couple. It goes on and on.
Dumb and
I mean,
Dumber.
even you could put two of the characters from Friends together. Almost any two of the guys would form that kind of, dynamic. So what they were tapping into was everyman type of middle class or lower middle class people who are just trying to get by. The other thing is that, like you said, there were bits or gags that set up the big payoffs, the climax. That respect for structure also helps this story become and retain an attractiveness, an ability to engage people even of 2024. Most people who find this is because their parents put it on while they were prepping the turkey or whatever, and you guys, it wasn't like
The veggies.
someone saying, "Oh, you know what? I discovered this new thing that no one's ever seen." It's passed down, and it's passed down because it's relatable. Caseen didn't become a fan of it because it was the cutting edge. It was because he recognized enjoyable elements. And as long as you're a story fan, you're going to.
I can see Caseen wanted to say something, then I have a question for you, Caseen.
Yeah, I wanted to circle back to some things that were said, because this conversation is great. It's making me like think I'm re-experiencing the movie differently now, because Alex, you started talking about just setting it in 1934. And again, I just amorphously knew that it was in the 30s and not really thinking about when this is set. But there is so much of that class warfare in this, where it's not just the toy maker, but also like Barnaby is basically trying to win the affections of someone by threatening eviction of a shoe because they're destitute and can't pay their bills.
It's bribery. Straight up bribery.
It's blackmail.
Hey, your mortgage? Give me the girl.
So I think that is a relatable sort of element that I hadn't really put in its kind of historical framework. But the other thing, Chris, you were talking about the type of comedy that exists today versus the type of comedy that this is. And as you both know, I wrote a book on Pee Wee Herman. And this is reminding me very much so of, there is no Pee Wee Herman canon. The canon is the character. And then in one movie, he's searching for a bicycle. In another situation, he's in a playhouse. And they're not all in the same universe. It's just the character is well defined. And that's why you can drop Laurel and Hardy in Toyland, in working for a bank, you can just take those characters and
piano
put them
movers.
wherever you
Yeah.
want, and you know what you're going to get to some extent.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking a little bit about the constant critique. Probably the joke about SNL is everyone thinks that their generation of SNL was the best generation of SNL.
Sure.
But I think there is something about SNL. It used to be much more character driven.
Right.
And now you could take the Blues Brothers and drop them. It was the juxtaposition of these well-defined characters in different situations. That's where you got your comedy, and you knew to some extent what you were going to get, but also to some extent it was, how is this well-defined character going to react in this world? And I don't think that's real. I don't think it's an unfair take to say SNL has deviated from really strong characters in their format now. And I guess the only other stray thought that I had in this potpourri of comments, I guess, is I worked with a guy named Bob Gale who wrote the Back to the Future films. One of the things that he said to me, which I think is very instructive, he said, people sometimes ask me, these films, it's time travel, so you always have to really be conscious of the narrative, and you don't want to create a paradox. There are rules of time travel, and every time travel story has its own rules, and you have to figure it all out. And so people say, they're popcorn films, but they're complex films. What's your writing tip? And I always give everyone the same tip. The most important things to writing: character and character.
Yes, I agree.
And everything else falls into place. If people believe in your characters, they'll forgive a little plot thing that doesn't work. They'll forget. It doesn't. Those are the three most important.
They even notice it.
Yeah, and everything else it just falls into place.
If I could add something there, and it's a mistake to think that Laurel and Hardy didn't do a ton of character work, because all their character work was nuance of the character. There's this great story that Dick Van Dyke tells about one time he did Stan Laurel on his Dick Van Dyke show, whatever. I guess it was a variety show, one of those things. And Stan was still around. He was an older man. And he called Dick Van Dyke, complimenting him for the performance. And he says, Dick, thank you very much. Is there anything I didn't get right? He says, and Stan Laurel very pleasantly spoke to him for 90 minutes for a 2 or 3 minute sketch about these little nuances. You did this, I would have done this, and the character does this. And then he says, it was great.
Masterclass.
He starts, it was a great performance, but then he says, the nuance that he taught me so much about how much went into the Stan Laurel character, the Oliver Hardy character. And that is, for performers who watch this show, that's a great lesson. But for writers, that's one of the reasons why I'm always saying, when I have those, I don't know, the list, the number keeps going, but it's about 148, 168 character questions. They're not necessary, but the more you think about them and the more you know about the characters, the more authority you perform those characters or put those characters on the pages. So what you see here is, in fact, a masterclass. These two are fully formed and they work together, knowing each other's nuances. Silas Barnaby committed to that character. It's a joy, even after all these years, to watch his overacting and his faces and all these things that he did that are hilarious and villainous and bombastic and perfect for this story. And that's one of the great joys of creating what's perfect for this story. And there's a lot to build on. Does anyone else want to talk about anything else on longevity, or can we go to characters and performances? It seems like a pretty good segue.
Well, yeah, we can. And I will just say that we're constantly talking about Cyrus Barnaby. So I will just throw out the actor's name was Henry Brandon.
There you go.
And
who was in a lot of stuff afterwards,
absolutely,
as he got older.
I was going to say that his chronology of work is very varied, including He-Man kind of stuff, So he has, if you want to take some time to look him up, Henry Brandon, Brandon. You might want to see how talented this man was and where he went beyond his 22-year-old experience as old man in this particular film.
The Searchers
so
is probably
yeah,
the main villain, right? Villain,
and a completely almost unrecognizable the two performances, but the character, but the
I could have used some more of this in The Searchers. I could have
yes, that's just, it's just the best. But all right, let's talk about Stan and Ollie and the old mother in the shoe and Tom and Bo Peep and old King Cole, and finally, perhaps, as we've been saying all episode, one of the best performance villains of all time, Silas Barnaby. What do you love about these characters? And if there's anything, what do you hate about?
Go,
we're going to start with Mr. Gaines again.
Yep, I want to give him plenty screen time.
Oh boy!
So he always gets the first serving here on Thanksgiving.
Yeah, I'll try this year. So I guess look, I come to the film for a couple people: Laurel and Hardy, Sandy D, and Ollie Dumb, or whatever. Maybe I've got it backwards. And those two worth the price of admission. And Barnaby, of course. Tom, who, for those who are unacquainted, again, Alex gave the spoiler warning a couple times. He is our hero,
a romantic lead.
Yeah, our romantic lead. I don't know what like the male equivalent of an ingenue is, but he's like that.
That's
that kind of role. And his relationship with Bo Peep is fine for me. It doesn't bother me. He's got some of these beautiful operatic tenor ballads that he goes through, which as a kid, I would like either fast forward through if I was watching VHS, right. Or maybe that's when you go and you food and see if you can pick something up. Yes. But I actually, as I've gotten older, I appreciate them. I think it adds a different layer dynamic to the movie. Bo Peep is, again, just your ingenue sort of role to me.
Adorable.
Adorable, got the little curls. The king, he's just got that big voice. And, and again, they're just caricature. The king especially is just a caricature of a part. Like the toy maker.
He would fit well in Pee-wee's Playhouse, wouldn't he?
Just absolutely. Yeah. Because that's big. Yeah, just big, broad character. And Barnaby, I forgot who said, whether it's Alex or Chris, but talked about how Oliver Hardy gets his comeuppance over and over again. And he's the smartest guy in the room, but that intelligence just fills him with blind spots, just everywhere. He can't consider for half a second that anyone else has anything of value to offer to this world. And he has a bit of that as well. And I think that's why it's so satisfying to see him get his comeuppance. And I know we're going to talk more about favorite moments, but Barnaby, of course, gets shown up in this great, I think what might be the first gay marriage on screen in this. Yes. And it's such a satisfying moment because of who Barnaby is. Yeah, I just think the performances are really great. Oh, no, I'm sorry. I didn't talk about the old woman in the shoe either, who, as Chris said, she's grandma from the Little Rascals things.
Looks like she's wearing the same dress, too.
She does look like she's wearing the same
wardrobe
dress.
Department.
Yeah, but you know what? Again, I feel like we keep going back to it, or I keep going back to it, but there's a temptation sometimes to break the formula. And whether it's just for your own, I want to keep the creative juices going, whatever it is, but they had this stable of actors that did certain things well. And so they fit in this universe, and they were able to fit in the universe of some of the other things that this studio was doing. So why not let them do it? Why not just lean into what you do? It's great to stretch. And if you have someone, the actor's name, Henry Brandon, if you have a Henry Brandon who maybe can do 20 different types of roles, that's great. That doesn't necessarily mean that he has to do them all for Hal Roach. You can just
do in the Lon Chaney school of acting.
That's right.
Yeah. That's a perfect, that's like such a great reference there. So anyway, that's my scatter shot. But the best performance is, of course, Mickey Mouse is clearly the best performance.
Oh, you didn't
is that segueing into some of the things you didn't like about the film?
No, is that this section, or we're getting?
Yeah, we're doing the best and the worst of the
Okay, so we'll get to the mouse later, but that's my bit on the characters.
Yeah, Mickey Walt was friends with, I guess, Hal Roach or somebody.
Yep.
And uncredited let him use Mickey for free, and was horrified.
It was the one and only time.
And the
yeah.
three pigs from the cartoon. This is
Right, right. The three pigs.
And that music.
Yeah, and they fared way better than Mickey.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's because the bar was in Hades.
He did have a great action adventure sequence, Mickey.
Yeah,
And
with the balloon and all that. Yeah.
keep an eye out on the Zeppelin there. As you were talking about a stable of characters, in looking this up and preparing today, I was shocked, like Barnaby shocked, that Scotty from the Little Rascals is somewhere in this movie. He's credited as being one of the children in the movie. No idea. Never saw him. Something to look for this year to see if I can find him. But Alex looks like he's chomping at the bit to talk about characters and stuff. So go ahead, Alex.
Okay. I am totally in the seat right next to Caseen, who I show up to watch first and foremost, which is Stan and Lolly. That's what you come for the turkey and then you get the everything else, right? You get the dressings and the stuffing and all that. I enjoy these guys, and there's 3 of their films that I absolutely adore. This is my holiday one for them. I think this gets to top level shelf because it's a holiday film for me as well, and really speaks to the kid in me. But there's 2 others of their film that I really love, and what you were saying, Caseen, about their character, and also Chris was saying about their character and how they play off of each other and the nuances, it permeates their work. So watching them in almost anything is thoroughly enjoyable, especially from their early years. This movie, I love them. I love these 2 characters. I enjoy Barnaby because, I don't think it would have worked if he played subtle. I just don't think it would have fit.
Alex, you don't think he's playing subtle?
No, I don't think he's playing subtle at all. I think he had to be this big because he literally, he's filling the stage with all of this pomposity and his nefariousness, And when you think about it again, let's put this in the time scope a moment again. 1930s, older dude hitting on this pretty young girl, okay, who's maybe 17 or 18, right?
Because he holds the mortgage.
Because he holds the mortgage and he wants to marry her, and I marry her, okay? And so if he had played it subtle and everything, it would have come off really skeevy,
right,
and closer to what it really is, could have felt like. So I think he plays it broad. He plays a little bit more cartoonish, but it's also very much enjoyable because every time he gets it's even more fun. It's even more fun. And in terms of story structure, he wins a little, he gets smacked. He wins another, he gets smacked. He wins it. Now that's it. Okay, now I'm bringing out all the beasts. And so we are watching the rising action of this story, and it is building the tension, it is building the stakes consistently. He gets bigger and he gets more threatening as the film progresses. And it starts out with, I'm just going to blackmail you by saying, look, you let the kid marry me or you got no place to live, to, okay, let's go destroy the town. And I'm taking whatever I want. That's a great build anticipation, suspense. We're going, whoa, how far is this going to go? And how are our heroes and heroines going to survive this? So I like watching how our 2 characters, Laurel and Hardy, who really are not, they're not SWAT. They're not trained to take on this kind of stuff. And yet they manage to they use what's available at the time to get them through that first obstacle, then that next obstacle. So it's like watching them improvise their way through these dangers. And it makes it, again, feel like every person, I don't say every man, gender specific, every person, the average person, trying to cope with these overwhelming challenges. And so I think that's one of the things I enjoyed as a kid. It's like, are they going to make it? And as an adult, I go back and go, dog, look at this. So it's there. That's great for me. So I love.
Can I just ask Alex a quick question?
Excuse me. Yeah.
I just want to make sure that I'm understanding. So you're saying that the real estate mogul, he wins, then when he loses and he can't accept his loss, he then weaponizes the justice system against his enemies and goes on a full retribution tirade. Am I understanding
right?
That?
And then when that doesn't work, he takes an entire horde of less than educated, willing minions to just rape and pillage. Yeah,
Yeah, I'm saying it's 1934. That's
Right,
right.
right. I wanted to add
As opposed
on
to 2024, it's 1934. But I didn't finish. So there's Laurel and Hardy, there's Barnaby, and then there are. I know how you feel about the mouse in terms of his visuals.
Love the mouse.
No, I know. I meant Caseen. I know how you feel about in terms of his visuals, but I liked his antics throughout there. It's that little person. It's almost like the Little Rascals. It's the little kids getting over. So I like what he was able to do, bombing them from the folks. I'm telling you, there's so much stuff in this film. You should be like salivating to watch it next week.
Yeah.
You should be going, where is this? I live in Montana. Where is it showing in Montana? You should be really doing that. But I like the mouse. The pigs have a position in this is fun. So I think that there's a lot of little things that are just there for almost any member of the audience who could enjoy the nonsensical, fun, good versus evil kind of tale that this is. Because again, in the end, we win. And that makes you feel good. And that's part of what I get out of this movie.
If I could just layer on one more part of that.
Certainly.
Whether it's Stan and Laurel, Stan and Ollie, or Mickey, or the townspeople, or the kids, or the toy maker, or the soldiers, the drive for all of Toilet is to do good by their neighbor. Right? Stan and Ollie get in trouble because they want to help and they have neither the agency nor the expertise to fulfill the promise of help. They try their best and then they have to try and figure out what to do because the bad guy won. And then they go and they give him the Christmas gift and then the wedding and then on. But what I love about it is that they're just trying to do right by their neighbors. In this case, old Mother Hubbard lived in a shoe, right?
Who's their landlady?
Or Bo Peep, right? Yeah. And they promise Ollie was ready to pay the mortgage, but Stan borrowed the money so he could get his peewees. And as much of a gag as that is, it winds up paying off really well at the end. It's such a tight construction, and it's about them trying to, most of the core cast are good people trying to look out for each other. Tom wants to look out for Bo Peep. He's up against the man, right?
And Mother
Bo
Hubbard's
Peep would
looking out
like
for
to
Bo
look
Peep
after the
too,
sheep, but she sucks at her job, right? But this guy right over my shoulder, Silas Barnaby, he acts only for himself. And I think that's one of the keys to the longevity and the timelessness is that struggle continues everywhere all the time.
And I know Caseen wants to say something, but I just want to quickly throw in there, just based on what Chris said. Also, Silas cannot stand humiliation. Part of what escalates the circumstance. He cannot deal with looking bad, and he strikes back. Yeah. Does that sound familiar? Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I just wanted to say to what Chris was saying, even everyone's accepting of everyone's limitations too. Even Bo Peep, who sucks at taking care of the sheep, they sing a whole song and the whole village is looking for her sheep. And they know, look, you lose them all the time and there's no judgment. It
takes a village to keep those sheep in town.
Oh, there's that. But also, I just wanted to say what amazing, from a writing standpoint, what amazing trust for the audience that, speaking of that Pee-wee's situation, I don't know the exact minute mark, but that's got to be in the first 5-10 minutes proper of the movie. You get the setup for that, and that gets paid off in like the last 90 seconds of the movie. And there's something about the trust you're putting in your audience. And I think so much, especially things that are written with children in mind, it's like, we have to remind them, we have to show, we have to have all of this exposition, we have to and they just believe that the audience is going to be there in the end, and they are.
Or they'll catch up.
There's something great about that. Or you'll catch up. I don't have anything profound to say, except it's a worthwhile acknowledgement just of the strength of the writing of this film.
Yes. I want to go just want to aside that doesn't build, but it's fascinating. It's in the movie. What do we think about the very light S&M, where Tom puts Bo Peep's ankles in
the stockade,
in bondage in the stockade there until she agrees, which is just played off lovingly and stuff. But it threw me. It was like they're just putting her prisoner, even when I was a little kid. And
it's an exercise in trust, because if you take that scene, but you go to the earlier one when Silas first approaches Bo Peep, when she's out in the pasture there, and he stops her by placing his cane in front of her across her midsection. He says, "No, don't leave yet. I want to talk." And he's holding her at bay, or keeping her from progressing, from leaving,
keeping her prisoner.
Right, keeping her prisoner with just this obstruction and his intention.
Right.
He's moving in on. He's letting her know, "I'm coming for you," and he even says in a very eloquent way, "I would like you to become my wife." And he plays with some pretty words, and she very gently says, "I ain't having any of that." And he then pushes it a little bit forward, and that's different. The intention and the atmosphere and the attitude is different than when Tom puts her ankles in, because he's singing to her and he's talking to her.
Right.
And you can
and it's
tell
the tone, you know.
But also you can tell how him.
Right.
And that's a part of what's different, is she is open to his advances, if you will. And again,
Silas has the implied threat.
Yeah.
Tom's not threatening at all.
No.
It's more of a loving, teasing thing.
Yeah.
So the SM was just kidding. We have talked about many of the other supporting characters in passing, so we're going to move there. I'd love to talk about the toy maker, Santa, Stan, Ollie, and the incredible screw up of the Order of Toy Soldiers. That this mistake, the entire safety of their world winds up hinging on it. But at first, it's a set piece, like a Laurel and Hardy set piece of comedy, with the spilling of the paint, and Santa being so sad, but you made 100 soldiers. I ordered 600 soldiers 1 foot tall. You made 100 soldiers 6 feet tall. I can't let my children play with those. And everything that happens, the demonstration goes wrong, the paint goes wrong. There's a subtext that they have to ask the toy maker for an advance of pay to save old Mother Hubbard's home. And it's all built up as a really great, fun set gag until later on when we really need that mistake. What do you want to say about that?
Well, you said it all. No.
All right, we're done. Thank you.
Take it away, Caseen. Yes.
No, I think it's set up, payoff. And that Chris just described a series of setup and payoffs. They're going to ask the toy maker for an advance. And it's going to be, Ollie's going to ask, because he and the toy maker are like this. So you see, they're not going to get the advance. Ollie, who is very confident, gets his comeuppance again.
He's not like this.
Yep, you see, so it's a series of all of that. The expectation is that they're going to get the advance, and they end the sequence getting
fired, right?
And the toy order, which is probably their coup de grace for the holiday season, for their best client, of course, or their best client. It ends up being completely bungled until the end, where we realize, actually, once again, Stan did something right. We didn't know it, but once again, he saved the day.
And he almost accidentally comes to that knowledge when they're looking for Pee-wees or looking for something, right? So there's never a master plan with these two.
No,
like they're open to their community, right?
They're improvising through it. I also want to say that, again, in talking about the rise and fall of tension and what's at stake, Oliver, brags that he and the toy maker are just like that, but they're not. It's after Barnaby basically goes to Mother Hubbard and says, "Hey, once again, give me the daughter, or you guys are out on the street. You got X number of hours to make that decision." And she's distraught. She is distraught. Mother Hubbard does not have a farthing, 2 farthings to rub together. And she's really upset. And so when Oliver makes this promise, oh, don't worry about it. I got this. I got this. Because me and the toy maker are like that. The burden is lifted from her shoulders. This old lady is happy. Oh, thank God. And so then they go for it, and then everything goes wrong. And then, so we watch them get fired, which is okay. Wow, that was bad. But then they have to go back and tell
Yeah.
her, we didn't get the money. And now she realizes her daughter is at stake. The safety and the happiness of her daughter is at stake. Yeah, I'm going to get thrown out on the street, but my daughter. And so again, the writing it's taking you with the humor, it's taking you
Yeah.
through the fantastic moments, the silly moments, the crazy moments, the absurd moments, all of that. And then it brings you back to the human element.
Yeah.
And then it takes you back to the craziness again, and then it brings you back to the human element. So
Well,
it's
their failure there inspires them to the next
exactly,
sequence, and
exactly.
that failure to the next sequence until Silas takes action to try and ruin them all.
Yeah.
And that brings us, that bigger failure pushes us to the climax.
Yeah.
It's a great movie to watch, to learn structure overall, right? Adventure structure is in there, but comedy structure is in there because while they're setting you up or setting the story up for a bigger payoff, they're layering in so many comedy bits that they do so well that you almost don't notice the structure. You know, and that's how you get to an organic level of your story. That's why rewrite should run to rewrite, ladies and gentlemen. Run. Let it suck the first time and go back and
Yes,
oh yeah,
rewrites
that's
are
the
your
beauty.
friends. Rewrites are not your enemies.
Have we
And
worked enough?
Trim the fat too.
Yes.
It's a tight film, and
Yeah.
you can see it benefits from how conservative they are in the dialogue, even to the extent where a look will do in place of dialogue.
Oh yeah, yeah. You see
Show,
so
don't
many films
tell.
today that
Yeah.
have deleted scenes and this and that. I don't think there is a foot of film, extra film shot on this movie. And I think it was because they did all the work on the script and in prep. And then as they were going, they had their set pieces so tight and everything was dedicated to the build that they didn't need to improv. They didn't need that in that system, in the house system, you didn't have someone who says, I want to put my stamp on this. So I need a giant mechanical spider in the middle of the third act. No, it wasn't that. It was just, here we go. Boom, boom. Are we ready for part 3, the big payoff at what everyone's been waiting for? Let's discuss, ladies, just gentlemen here. Sorry for the sausage party, but let's discuss favorite lines, favorite gags, favorite moments, all the stuff that hopefully will make anyone who hasn't set their VCR or DVD or DVR already while watching this, who will just now run and say, I have to watch this Thursday morning. Let's discuss all that stuff. What are your favorite things that make you get up every year, early Thursday, Thanksgiving morning, to watch March of the Wooden Soldiers? Let's start, just as a surprise, let's start with Caseen.
Believe it or not, you actually had me for about 5 seconds. I was like, oh, okay, we're going to allude to it before, but there's a great sequence where there's a switcheroo that happens. I won't totally explain how it happens, but Barnaby ends up accidentally or unknowingly getting married to Stan Laurel in the film. And
he thinks he's marrying Bo Peep.
He thinks he's marrying Bo Peep, but he ends up marrying Stan Laurel. And so again, broken record, you think the joke is over. You think that's the joke. Right. And then clearly the marriage is going to be annulled. It didn't really happen, but Barnaby gets married to Bo Peep, and in exchange, he's going to give the deed to the shoe. So now our heroes have accomplished the film-long goal. This is the climax. So they rip up the deed and mission accomplished. And Ollie says, okay, I'll see you later. And Stan goes, well, what are you talking about? He goes, you just got married to Barnaby. You have to live here now. And Ollie, starts to blubber and cry and says, "But I don't love him." And this is again the
I can't
comedy
stay here. Why not? Because I don't love him.
The comedy is so great because we could sit here and workshop a dozen other ways to end that scene. 1934, especially for it to be, "I can't stay here because I don't love him," is so wonderful. It's such a great payoff. It's funny, but I hope what telegraphs it, because Chris set this up as, if you've never seen this before, what's going to make you tune in? And the performances married with the writing is what makes it. So as if it sounds funny in description, it is 20 times funnier in execution, because you have these master performers that are executing on this script. And the one thing I want to sneak in on this point is, I learned this somewhat recently, but Stan Laurel wrote a lot. He was really the creative force behind this duo, and he wrote a lot of their material. And long after they stopped performing, he kept writing for them. And he would call Oliver or mail him scripts and say, and they would get on the phone and they would just verbally act out these things, because Stan was so in tune with these characters, and they would on the phone together, "No, I think we would do this." And then I would look to the camera, and this was, there were just all of these, not even unseen, just this material, this wealth of material that they knew they were never going to perform.
Right.
It was just a commitment to these characters that they had developed, and the writing of it, that they stuck to. And I think you see this in such great display in that sequence that I talked about, but also throughout all their work.
Right. Now, you mentioned that, I think I would turn, it brings to mind that Oliver Hardy, I could be wrong, but he seems to me to be one of the earliest purveyors of breaking the fourth wall on film, where he would just, and all those things. Think of Deadpool, right? He's made his signature, but its legacy comes all the way back to Ollie being Stan. Never, I don't think I've ever seen Stan break the fourth wall, but Ollie does. Yes, performances, fantastic. I think one of the other things that I love is all the stuff that shouldn't work. Right? The songs, like Tom's big romantic song, is such a staple of 1930s films. Marx Brothers have the same kind of thing. But there is that time when they gets banished to Bogeyland, and Bo Peep wants to try and save him, and they break into this song, and these kind of fairies that may or may not, ghost type fairies.
No.
None of this should work in the year that they made it, right? And that song is the greatest challenge of the movie. If you can get through that, you're a professional level. And the reason you can get through it from your second viewing on, because this is the last price you pay, because from the end of that song to the credits, it is an adventure film. And I want to talk about, just for a second, these guys here. Let's see if I can get out of the way. Okay, those are the boogeymen. And you can see that they're made from what looks like old bathrobes and bath mats or whatever. Yeah, yesterday's rug, whatever.
Pumpkin.
And the masks,
some of them using bath salts, I think.
right? And the masks are horrible. However, when I was a kid, and when you two were kids watching this, or in Alex's case, well over 50, when he was first watching this, after he made it at 22, those characters, as bad as the costumes are, with the big safety blocks on their back, they're scary. They're scary when they break in on the windows and the little kids are there. I love how it doesn't work and it works simultaneously, and it has to be seen to be believed, because it's just, and of course the music helps. The performance of Stan and Ollie and their fear, and Tom's fear, and Bo Peep's, that helps sell them and Silas's absolute confidence that they have the army that will take over Toyland for all time.
Yes,
and
there he is
change
standing
it.
on that platform in the street. Oh no, I'm sorry, that's something else.
It's just absolutely solid gold. No matter what people want to say about the quality, that you could pull off the illusion, right? Storytelling is the illusion of that reality superseding your reality sitting there watching it or reading a book or whatever. Excellently well done.
Can I sneak in something? Oh, sorry.
No, sneak it in, then I'm gonna.
It's a quick sneak, sorry, but I think there's something about this time period in film where it was not necessarily meant to last.
Right.
And I think about this all the time with something like The Wizard of Oz, which is only 5 years after this, how technically amazing that film is. And it stands up still to anything made that's 85 years ago at this point. But it's something that was going to be in theaters for a period of time, and there was no television. There was no, you would maybe reissue it 20 years later, 10 years later, try and milk it for another couple weeks, and then it'd be gone again. And now filmmakers and storytellers know if you're a blogger, everything on the internet is forever, right? Everything's going to live forever. And there's obsessing over every word, every this, every that. And sometimes there is just something great in the completion of something. And I think this film is a testament to that. It is not a flawless film, but it is a film that shines despite its flaws because there is so much care and attention in the places that matter. And the big
execution of
craft on the
craft
back is irrelevant when all the other pieces are in place. That's all.
They committed to doing this, to telling the story. They absolutely committed full out to making this story work. There was, if when the camera was off, anybody was standing off stage going, oh God, this is never going to work. Oh God, I'm so ashamed. If that was going on, if it was, it's completely lost when the cameras came on. This was full out, let's do this, let's get it done, let's shoot it to the best of our abilities. Like you said, the performances, nobody's holding back, yeah, I'll just pace through this. That wasn't happening. And part of that is because this is work.
Yeah.
This is work. This is my job. This is my work, my calling. This is my responsibility. This is what I signed up for. This is what these guys on the other side of the cameras expect from me, or else I'm not going to be working again. So there's all of this commitment that came to it. And part of that is the results of that is what I'm going to touch on now, which is I put this out on Facebook. I just asked people basically, had you ever seen it? And if so, did you like it or whatever? And over 30 people responded. And some of the remarks are, love every minute of it. I watched it with my sister. I watched it with my parents every year. WPIX always shows it. I love it. It's our holiday favorite. My sister and I watched it every year at Thanksgiving. We would quote lines from the movie to each other, even turning Bo Peep calling for her sheep backwards, and they would play with the wording. Come on, how many years can you be watching this? You start to rewrite things as it's playing. It's like with the Rocky Horror Show. There's one person who is more of an aficionado on Disney, and he wrote, Walt Disney was also a good friend to Hal Roach and Laurel and Hardy. He allowed them to use an uncredited Mickey Mouse and the Disney version of the Three Pigs, including snippets of their theme songs. It says later years, Walt asked Stan to come out of retirement to play the evil Barnaby in the Disney's Babe in Toyland, but Stan, who refused to work on screen after Ollie died, politely declined. So you were just talking about how he would call Ollie and talk to them and run things that he had written back and forth and then to play. He was committed to his partner and to the craftsmanship work that they did together. And once that could not happen anymore, he retired in a certain way. He didn't feel he had to, let me milk this for the last little moment that I can. Right. He made certain commitments to what had been. And so I have, like I said, there's a lot of people who chimed in on this. And
there's that guy in the thread, Alex.
The diversity of the audience is the other thing I wanted to say. The diversity of the audience here, the varying backgrounds of the people who commented, I love this film. I love this film. I watched it with this member of my family, whatever, is another testament to the joy and the entertainment value of this particular piece. What were you going to say, Chris?
In that thread, one of the people that commented mentioned that when Hal, I think it was when Hal Roach finished it, he thought he had a flop.
Mm.
And that's a testimony to something all of us creatives all of the creatives go through, which is that editor on the shoulder, that moment of doubt, that creative doubt, which is always part of the cycle. And he moved forward anyway. And 90 years later, we're still celebrating this film. So, ladies and gentlemen, don't listen to that editor on the shoulder when he says it sucks. Ask that editor why. Show me very specifically why. And that editor will say, oh, I have a concept of a plan. But sorry. There we go, ladies and gentlemen. Lord of the Rings. That's really funny.
Okay.
March of the Wooden Soldiers, 90 years old this year, and we're still enthusiastically celebrating it.
And it still has so much to show us and teach us about storytelling.
Yep.
Yeah.
Go make an appointment, watch it Thanksgiving morning. Give yourself, your creative self, a treat.
Caseen?
And teach yourself how to do that hand trick thing, that little hand trick thing. Yeah, no, I enjoy it, love it. It's so much fun, and I try every year to get my wife into it, and she doesn't like the bogeyman. That's like she'll rock until a certain point.
That scares her. Is she scared?
Not a big fan of the bogeyman, but yeah, no, it's a lot of fun. So enjoy it, watch it. It's fun for the whole family, and I think one of the things that we've been alluding to is it's a great thing to have someone, a younger person in your life, put the screen down for a minute, put the phone down for a minute. It's a short film. Maybe it's a good thing to sit on the couch and watch and introduce to a new generation
Popcorn
as well. Yeah.
Eat it with popcorn or raisinets.
That little eggnog.
Yeah.
That's it.
So thank you for being here with us, everybody. Caseen, so good to have you back. We got to have you back actually to talk about whatever it is that you got on the publishing range now, because I know you never stop working. You never stop.
Ooh.
What's coming out that you can talk about, Caseen?
What's coming up that I can talk about? I've got a book coming out that I'm working on, The Wiz, which is really exciting, and I have a project that I can tease a little bit on. It's a little bit of a different kind of book for me, but I'm doing a book on Jordan Peele's film Us.
Really?
And it's a little bit different. I'm going to describe it as I'm going to leave it at that. It's a little bit different.
It's different. Okay.
But let me not get myself into trouble. It's a little bit different.
But so was Us was a little bit different.
Yes.
There's more coming from Caseen Gaines. He may not be able to talk
and one
about
more
it.
thing I can mention. I can talk about this too. The other thing I can mention is I'm working on a book. I'm very excited. We're going to book with Bootsy Collins.
Yes,
selling his book, and that is or working with him on his book, and that is, I believe, coming out in 2026. And Bootsy, if one loved Bootsy, his story is all sorts of amazing, and we have great things planned, and he's so excited, and he's gonna do lots of events, and he's gonna go out and tour, and he wants to meet people, and so I'm super excited about
That's gonna be fun. Cool.
Yeah.
I got to tell some folks who may not know this. I want you to understand that when Caseen and Chris met many years ago, Chris was standing at the head of the room, and Caseen was sitting at a desk. So Caseen was a student in high school.
I think I was walking out of a classroom, but I was at a desk.
7th grade, yeah,
7th grade. So this is how long these two have known each other, and it's spooky.
And I will have you say that I will say here that over the years, and I went up to high school, and he followed me, of course, as a high school student, and then has come back to the same high school as a teacher. He has proven himself, and he'll say no, but he has proven himself to be a better teacher, a better play director, a better journalism teacher, a better overall innovator for courses. And then he followed me into the union thing, and he has become better building leader. And then he has been currently president of the union and doing a better job than I ever did. I am so that there's no thing that a father-ish person wants more for his son-ish person than to exceed and go further. And I can never be prouder of this guy here, Caseen Gaines, because he has been it's just been an amazing thing to watch. God bless him. He's a great guy.
Listen, and Chris said I was going to say no, and I'm going to say no, but I'm going to say this one thing though, and I've probably said this on some earlier episode, but when we talk about representation, I think in 2024 representation, we often talk about in terms of whether it's racial representation or gender identity or whatever. That's the way that we think about it in demographic sense. But Chris was the first person that I knew who had written something that you could buy. And I can't tell you, and as the three of us, as people that have all written things that people can buy, sometimes there are folks that still go like, how do you do that? How do you, and you can do that through different means, through lots of different means, but you can do it. Anyone who's listening to this and is saying, I'm listening because I want to learn how to do it, you can do it. And there are so many different ways. How it's going to work for you is Alex can tell you how he did it. Chris can tell you how he did it. I can tell you how I did it. And the way that the three of us did it is different. And it may not be your way. In fact, it's probably not going to be your way. But seeing someone who did that, you go to a bookstore and it's those things just appear. Like how did this even happen? And I can't tell you how transformative it was to have someone that you can actually see and talk to and know, that did this thing that it seemed like magical elves did. And that was really transformative. And so I give ultimate thanks to Chris for that and anything that came afterwards. They're just these, again, we talked earlier, I was like a sponge as a kid. And I think in a lot of ways, maybe I'm still a sponge. And that was just a very formative experience for me as someone growing up. So
it's people being in the right place at the right time. Very much. By the way,
like Stan and Ollie, you just have to try and serve the community.
Yeah. And I just want to throw in this little piece of information that I forgot to throw in earlier. We were talking about people's commitment to the production of the film and how Roach was thinking, oh, I did. Part of it was, I think Chris had asked something about production. They rehearsed the film for 12 weeks. And then they shot for 12 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
In effect, 24 weeks.
Wow.
To put that whole thing together. That's why it was, again, work, rehearse, work, shoot, boom, we're done. Let's get it out. So sometimes, again, it's commit to getting the work done. Serve the project, serve the story, get it done, get it out. What happens after that is for history to determine.
That 12 weeks of pre-production and rehearsal, it's so rare these days, and it's so necessary. I think that's where you do your rewrites, whether it's in your performance or nuance or just the slight inflection in the voice or the timing. That's where all that happens, so that it's so great in the performances. And 90 years later, we're still enjoying it.
Talking about it. So, folks, I'm going to do it this week. Please, if you enjoyed this episode, hit the subscribe button, because Chris has asked you for years to do that, and now I'm asking you to do that, because when we have Caseen back next time, you don't want to miss that. Okay?
That's right.
All right. Caseen, again, a pleasure. We'll see you again, I'm sure, very soon. Meantime, keep doing what you're doing, because obviously you're doing it well. And Chris, as always, a joy and a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Caseen. Happy Thanksgiving to both of you and to all of you out there. I hope you got a chance to check out March of the Wooden Soldiers and enjoy your turkey day or whatever you're going to have. If you're vegan, have a vegan turkey. It doesn't make a difference. Just be around.
Tofu turkey.
Enjoy. All right.
Take care, everybody.
Peace. Or maybe 2 pieces.